People wondered why anyone with those kinds of powers and abilities, if it were true, would use them to help others and not for their own benefits. And I found myself smiling. Today on the Comic Book Report, Superman for All Seasons by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm back in Metropolis to talk about Superman for All Seasons. I am a huge fan of Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale's work, and this was an absolute treat to revisit for the review on this channel today. But before we dive in, I just want to shout out our channel sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, definitely check them out with the link in my description. You can even use my code, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order today. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support this channel. Thank you so much for considering. Now let's get started with today's Superman review. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Jeph Loeb and illustrated by Tim Sale. The comics in this volume were published by DC Comics beginning in 1998. The volume itself collects Superman for All Seasons, issues 1 through 4. And finally, this standard size trade paperback comes in at 224 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at Superman for All Seasons, and admittedly, right from the jump, this is an older trade paperback collection that I picked up at a used bookstore recently. I loved this story when I first read it, but I guess I never had the opportunity to pick up my own copy. I think I might have read this from a friend or digitally initially, so I knew that this was always a book I wanted in my own personal collection. I was really ecstatic to find a good-looking copy in a used bookstore. I had to pick it up, and if I'm going to reread it, I had to review it for all of you. For those that don't know, I'm a huge Jeph Loeb, Tim Sale fan. I know I've reviewed all of the Batman stuff, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Catwoman When in Rome, Haunted Night, some of those in the Omnibus collection. Over at Marvel, I've also read and reviewed some of his color series, with the Daredevil Yellow, Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray. I haven't read all of their shared bibliography yet, but I'm really enjoying what I have read. Also really quick, a look at that glued binding. A little bit of gutter loss here, but overall a really solid binding even in this used book. This does have a glossy print paper stock, I was happy to see. Overall, this was a really well-made little collection, and you can find this book in different formats out there. But frankly, I'm just happy to have this in my collection at long last. And speaking of this collection, it's time to dive right in, and right from the jump, even being an admirer of Tim Sale's work, what he brings to For All Seasons here is something spectacular. I really love how much this feels tailored to a Superman story. He really leans into something that makes it feel like classic Americana. I don't know if it was the coloring in this book, feeling a bit muted or understated compared to some of the stark color vibrancy I see in some of his other works. I think the most vibrant and shocks of color we get are actually the Superman colors themselves, the red, yellow, and blue of his actual costume. Everything else, as far as the scenic vistas, the settings, the kind of stage dressings we see around, they're beautifully illustrated and even beautifully colored, but I feel like the color palette feels a bit pulled back or muted, and I don't know if that is to make it feel more rustic and lived in and kind of this Norman Rockwell kind of feel, Thomas Kincaid kind of painted look where it just feels Americana. I don't know how to describe it. And I don't know if that color palette also existed to just have that heavy contrast with the vibrancy of the Superman costume, to see how much Superman shows up and just punches into the rest of the world around them. I don't know. But at any rate, I think it's just fantastic. The art presentation is just top notch. And this is Tim Sale in some of just the best form I've seen him. And and I've been wowed by a lot of his work, particularly The Long Halloween and Spider-Man Blue. I think for me, those are some of his just high watermarks in the industry that I've had the privilege of reading so far. But honestly, this one is among them as well. Superman for All Seasons, I just feel like we get so much out of Sale here. And even just the character model for Clark Kent slash Superman, it just feels like Superman. There's a roundness to his features too that just makes this version of Superman feel even more inviting somehow. I don't know how to describe it. He even gets something right in the eyes, and they're not like photorealistic eyes, but there is this kind of glistening hope, warmth that radiate out of Clark and Superman's eyes in this book, that it's just wild to see, just beautiful. And I think it's really powerful that I'm starting this review with an examination of the artwork, because I think that the artwork is just that striking. Going back to the plotline, though, of this series, it is a 4-issue little standalone series. You can read it like a graphic novel. You don't need to know anything about the character, because ostensibly this is another Superman origin retelling. Each of the issues represent a time in the year: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Each of the seasons of the calendar year, thus Superman for All Seasons. And I really like it. I feel like each of those seasons are kind of thematically important for the subject matter we see in the issues themselves. And I think that that is really powerful. I love the breakdown. It's so simple, but it's so beautiful, and it fits even kind of the farmland of Smallville, Kansas, that's so determined based on the seasons and things like that. He grew up on a farm. He's a farm boy. To see how the seasons impact so much of his life, and then to see his life in different seasons, I just think it really resonates on so many levels. So right from the jump, the construction of this book, how it's laid out, how it was made, it just really sets itself apart. I think it's really, really incredible. Again, it's kind of reminiscent to me of like The Long Halloween, that it took a holiday across the year, and each issue was a different month with a different holiday. I just think that there's so much intentionality to the way these stories from Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale appear to be constructed. And again, this is among one of the best in my opinion. The story itself takes us from, again, his upbringing in Smallville, Kansas. We see his powers emerging. We see him unsure growing up. We eventually see him in the streets of Metropolis, kind of finding his way there, trying to work at the Daily Planet. We see the meeting of him and Lex Luthor. We see kind of face-offs with that dynamic, which was so well done and really well just orchestrated and shown. I love the early kind of tension and flirtation of the Lois Lane Clark Kent dynamic, but we do really have him still pining for his high school sweetheart, Lana Lang. She is really the female character in this book that seems to have the most impact and in many ways agency and sway over the plot. And I think that this was a really fun choice for a kind of Superman origin coming of age book, that the focus is not really as much on Lois Lane as the main female lead as it is Lana Lang. Even the issues or stories where she's not there, her impression and impact on Clark is absolutely felt, and I think that that was really well handled as well. And the fact that the whole portion of the last issue here was not even a main face-off with Lex Luthor. It's having him back home in Smallville, coming to grips with his own doubts and sense of identity, who he wants to be, what he wants Superman to be, what is his role here. I like that we have him dealing with so many doubts and just depths of himself, and we see him rise. We see what makes him Superman. We see all of these noble, humane qualities. We even have Lana kind of calling it out, like the best thing about Superman is knowing that it's Clark Kent, because I know this man, I know who he is and the goodness he has and the humanity he has. Even being an alien, the fact that he's the most humane thing that seems to be walking the planet, to know that that person is Superman is all kind of the trust in Superman I need. It's all like kind of the hope I need when I go and I read these news broadcasts about what he's doing or what's happening in the world. And I thought that that was just a really kind of beautiful, noble thing and sentiment sentiment we see throughout this book. This book really shines with just quintessential Superman goodness. I don't know how else to say it. It's really moving. It's really warm. It's really hopeful. There was moments in this where I felt just inspired reading it. There was moments where, frankly, toward the end, I felt a little bit moved to tears, just really seeing how good-natured this character is. It reminded me the best of what Superman stories can be. Looking at some of these shots here, I just love the scope that these artists are able to achieve in the storytelling. I do feel like overall, as far as the layouts, we are going back to art now in case you haven't noticed. I'm going to talk a little bit about the formatting and panel layout. I think that there is a very traditional, straightforward style to a lot of the panel layout. It's very rectangular, geometric, boxy, in some cases symmetrical, but we also have a lot of great splash pages and a fantastic assortment of two-page spreads. And I feel like with some of these big and kind of bold, breathtaking, larger images, we get a sense of the grandeur of Superman. We have these amazing scenic vistas, whether we're in Metropolis or we're in the wide open fields of Smallville, Kansas, or we have Clark saving the day from a flash flood and we see just the flood damage. We are kind of treated to a cinematic look, even within this very stylized, animated Americana style that Tim Sale is bringing to the art. And I love the kind of scope we have in this book. I think transitioning from Smallville to Metropolis back to Smallville, we get to see a lot of different locales. We get to see the influence of the people and the influence they have on Clark. And we get to see him in all these different environments, and I really liked it. I loved getting some of those character interactions for the first time. Again, we have Clark and Lois, Clark and Lex, Superman and Lex, just some really, really fun just first interactions. And I know there are so many Superman origin retellings or stories set in this period. I know I just reviewed Superman American Alien, which was also fantastic. I've recently read and reviewed things like Superman Birthright not too long ago, and there are so many more. Superman Earth 1, Man of Steel by John Byrne. Gosh, the list goes on and on. You can find some of these reviews on the Superman playlist on my channel if I haven't linked some of them to this video itself. But suffice it to say, this is well-trod territory over the last almost 100 years of this character, but frankly, this is one of my favorites. This one stands apart, and I don't know if it's because of the incredible stylized artwork of Tim Sale, and just it feels Americana. It feels traditional, core value, good-natured Superman. It's not overly sophisticated as far as it's not this kind of mental think piece, crazy layered storytelling. But there are certainly still some rich themes here. The story is still powerful in its simplicity. I think that I get so much out of this. It doesn't try to overcomplicate itself, but we have such a beautiful story here, and it's one of my favorite depictions of Superman. I was actually speaking to my wife the other day about this comic book. She's not really a comic reader at all, but I was trying to say I think you would enjoy this book because it has a quality that I think a lot of other comic books, especially these days, don't really have, especially in the big two when we have really big action superhero kind of books. And that quality is this feeling like it's not too aggressive or it's not too loud or in your face or frantic or frenetic. It feels just really a good pace. It feels very comfortable to read. It's not really abrasive, shocking, violence and action every 2 seconds. And that's not to say it's boring. It just has this really comfort feeling. It's almost like the comic book equivalent of kind of eating some comfort food. You're just relaxed. You can unwind reading it. You're not at the edge of your seat, tense every second, things like that. You can just kind of sit back and enjoy. Let it sort of wash over you. Have a nice time reading. You can have a really pleasurable, low blood pressure reading experience. And that might sound like a weird selling point, but I think for some people, a really fast pace, in your face, violent or graphic book can sometimes turn people off of a book. Some people prefer that. I understand different strokes for different folks, but that is a quality of this book that I felt like was really commendable. And I really realized it when I was speaking to my wife, that it's just a comfort read. I think pure and simple. It is such a great example of almost anyone can come to this book and just enjoy it. And that's the end of our collection. All that's left is to give this book a grade. It should be no surprise, with the gorgeous artwork paired with some of the best Superman storytelling I've ever had the pleasure of reading, that the Comic Book Report is giving Superman for All Seasons by Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale an A. This is a must-read comic book classic. It's perfect for new readers and veteran readers alike. Absolutely love this story. I think that it has every element that makes a great Superman story great. Highly recommend it. It was even better upon reread in some ways. I absolutely adore this book. I think it has a little bit of something for everyone, and it's one I'm sure to come back to year after year. I'm getting so excited just talking about it. At any rate, let me know what you think of this book in the comments below, what you thought of my review, and generally if you enjoyed Jeph Loeb or Tim Sale. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, maybe share it with your friends, or check out some of my other videos. Until next time, have a good one.